So a little over a week ago, Microsoft actually sent me a very large package in the mail that was a gift celebrating 10 years of Surface devices. There were a lot of fun things in there, but the biggest thing, the most important thing in there was a Surface Go 3. And I have been using this Surface Go 3 for the last, I don't know, about a week or so since I got that gift. I don't actually remember what day it was anymore. And in this video, I'm going to give my full review of this device. Now, to be upfront about this is the base model of the Surface Go 3. This is the Pentium Gold, 4 gigs of RAM, and I actually think that's an interesting little hook for this video. And what I mean by that is when you look up reviews of this device, almost everybody's reviewing the mid-range or the high-range. Nobody really ever reviewed the low-end version of this device. A lot of people said, ugh, 4 gigs of RAM, Pentium Gold processor, that's going to be garbage. I'm not reviewing that thing, so they didn't. And so I think there is, even if this is an older device now, I think that there is still a hole to fill in terms of coverage, and that is what I hope to be able to do here in this video. Before we go any further, let's take a look at the hardware and talk about that first. So I did have to buy the type cover keyboard, whatever you want to call this thing. I forget the exact name of it, but it's the keyboard case cover thing. I did have to buy that myself. Love the Surface logo back there in the back. Little webcam back there that nobody on planet Earth is going to use. Maybe if you're out in the field or something, you're a construction worker or something taking pictures, I guess you might use it at that point. There is, of course, Microsoft's proprietary charging cable, which I actually quite like. It's magnetic and snaps into place. USB-C, headphone jack, nothing on the other side, nothing on the top but the volume and the power, and nothing on the bottom except for the things that connect the keyboard. So no USB-A. You're going to need to have a USB hub of some kind if you intend on doing a whole lot of I/O with this device. If we open it up here, and in fact, I'll set the keyboard aside, you will see the 10.5-inch display. Windows Hello just logged me in right there, which is very, very nice. The bezels are relatively slim, nothing incredible, but I think it gives you enough to hold on to. Fairly ergonomically sound. Speaker there and there. I can show you those connectors on the bottom now and the little pins that hold everything in place. Of course, you do have the Surface style kickstand back here on the back, which is fantastic. It's rigid, it's firm. It allows you to set the device up wherever you want to at almost any angle. Really, really nice. And then it also reveals an SD card slot down there on the bottom. If we take a look at the keyboard, which is unfortunately sold separately, I think it's relatively good as well. The key travel is okay. It's shallow, right? Because this is very, very thin. But all that considered, it's still very, very good. The trackpad is nice and smooth and relatively large in particular for a device of this size. And when they get near each other, well, they just want to be together and they snap together very, very firmly. I love the hardware of this device. It's really, really solid. In fact, I've been really surprised how much I like the form factor, the hardware in general, the size of the Surface Go 3. I have been a Surface Pro user for a few years now. I've got a Surface Pro 7 and i5 model in the house, and I really like that device, but for some reason I think I like this size better. It's much more portable. It's easy to kind of carry around with you. It's not as heavy as the actual Pro device. So in terms of the physical aspect of this thing, I think it's very, very strong. Now, of course, your mileage may vary. Perhaps you'll find the keyboard too cramped if you have larger hands. I don't, so the keyboard is quite fine for me. But again, your mileage may vary. I would recommend going into a place like a Best Buy and physically typing some things on both to make that determination for yourself. But as for me, I am pleasantly surprised. I do continue to love the 3:2 aspect ratio of the screen. I love having that extra height. Let's actually take a moment and let's look at that screen a bit more closely. Again, using Windows Hello to log in, the screen is really, really good, okay? It's 1920 by 1280, 220 ppi, and that doesn't necessarily jump off the page. You're not like, wow, the specs are absolutely incredible. They're really good, but when you see it in person, it is a very vibrant, very clear, it's a nice screen. I have really no complaints about it. And again, that 3:2 aspect ratio, when you do launch something like a web browser, and let's go to Twitter, you're gonna find that you just have so much more room to have stuff on the screen. When I've talked about this in my unboxing, but whenever you look at something like a Galaxy Tab, which might be a competitor for something like this, it's just shorter, right? What you can get on the screen is just much, much smaller in that regard. I love the 3:2 aspect ratio. Of course, you can rotate it, and auto rotate is relatively fast, and you can use it like this if you want to do that as well. But let's transition from that to talking about battery life. So I've used it, like I said, a fair amount. And what I've basically done with this thing on a day-to-day basis is this, and we'll talk about this more when we get into the performance aspect, is I basically used it to browse the web, to look for news, things to talk about here, Twitter, Reddit, Feedly, things like that that I normally would do on my desktop computer. I've also, though, used it to watch some television. I've watched several TV shows on Netflix through it using the Netflix app in the store, and that has been quite good. I've used it to watch some YouTube videos while I'm perhaps doing dishes or something like that. I pop the keyboard off, take it in the kitchen, put it down on the counter, and watch some stuff that way. And it's been very, very good at all that stuff for the most part. Battery life has been fine, right? I unplug it at the beginning of the day, and a hard day's use where I tried to avoid using my desktop as much as I could for anything but filming and editing, watch some TV, watch some YouTube, and I'm still making it through the whole day without too much trouble. You're probably going to get somewhere around 6 hours of continuous use out of it, at least from what I'm getting here, which is more than enough for a smaller device like that. Now, while you're doing that stuff, there are some more things to talk about. Let's talk about the speakers, because I did find myself using it for multimedia more than I did on my Surface Pro 7. And maybe it's because it's easier to carry from place to place, and that makes more sense for me to watch TV on it. I'm not really sure why, but I really did enjoy and will continue to enjoy using it for things like Netflix. Well, when you're watching Netflix, I think the biggest drawback that I've come across so far is just the fact that the speakers aren't particularly loud. They sound quite good. I just wish that they were maybe 30% louder. As I think you can hear there, the sound is quite dynamic. It's quite full and detailed. Again, just wish the volume was a little bit more. So at this point, you've got a nice, well-built, relatively portable, relatively lightweight, convertible tablet with a nice screen, HDR, and all this stuff is in there. Some speakers that are pretty solid, battery life that should get you through a normal day of web-related stuff for the most part. Some multimedia functionality there as well. What is the downside? Well, the downside about this model is absolutely the performance. And now I actually don't necessarily think it's the RAM that's holding it back as much as it is that Pentium Gold processor. You start to feel things slowing down well before your RAM is filled up. All you have to do is just launch your web browser when it's not already in RAM, and you're going to see this thing having a hard time opening. Okay, you've got plenty of free RAM. It just has a hard time opening. It's just a slower process than you would like. And so I ran into a problem immediately, which is probably a mixture of the Pentium Gold and the small amount of RAM. I like to use web apps. I use Edge as my primary browser, and in Edge, I am signed in to my Google account that is associated with my YouTube channel. But that's not the account that I use to watch YouTube, to do YouTube Music and Google Photos, anything else basically. So I install web apps. I install Chrome and install those things as web apps signed into those, appropriate accounts. So then what winds up happening, and what did not work on the Surface Go 3, this model, was having Edge running, and then I go to open up YouTube in my Chrome web app. Now I have Edge and Chrome running side by side, and man, it did not like that at all. You could absolutely feel that I was pushing this thing to some sort of limit simply by having these two somewhat RAM-hungry applications running side by side. Let's take a closer look at performance that you might run into in day-to-day use. All right, so what I've done here is I've plugged my Surface Go 3 into a capture card so that you can see more clearly what is going on. This should not affect performance in any significant way. I do also want to point out that I've taken this device out of S mode. Basically, all S mode does, and that's how it comes, is it keeps you from installing .exe files. You can only run apps that you found in the Microsoft Store. I would also advise you, though, with this device in particular, this tier model, probably use as many apps from the Microsoft Store as you can, because they do, in fact, run better. I talked about using Chrome and Edge at the same time with a web app, and that's just not going to work all that well. Instead of doing a web app of Netflix, maybe just install the Netflix app. It seems to work a whole lot better. So let's start off here by showing you that nothing is running right now. You can see there's nothing going on. We'll take a look at Task Manager here as well. Let's pull this thing over and let's see if we can kind of suss out here where we're sitting in terms of performance. So the CPU is allowing itself to mostly idle. But notice how it never really gets below 4%. Just sitting here, looking at this is causing it to spike between 4, 5, and 19, 20%. CPU is not particularly fast. Looking at the RAM here, okay, so we're using 2.8 gigs. 72% of our RAM is already used just sitting here. That is definitely a problem. Let's go and look at our applications and let's see if we can determine what is using our RAM. So this is something that Edge actually does to try and launch faster. It will kind of hold on to some RAM in the background. We're going to end that task. Anti-malware services using 106 megabytes of RAM. That's something that maybe you can find some tweaky way to get rid of that. So now the Edge is gone. We're going to start fresh. Now we're down to 67% of our RAM being used, which is still a lot for just sitting here. But let's launch Edge and see how long it takes to fully open up and to load into Twitter. Is this as fast? This stuff irritates me. I do not want to use Bing. Is it as fast as my desktop computer? No, it is not. But I think that it is serviceably quick. Let's load up YouTube. Again, not blazingly fast, but there you go. We're just going to search for a 4K HDR video. I like this one of Costa Rica. Let's turn our volume down and let's go full screen. And actually, let's make sure that we are, in fact, streaming not at 480p. Let's go up to 4K and we should be rocking and rolling now. And it's going to have no problem at all, doing something like this, of course. But you can see a little bit of lagginess, a little bit of slowness here and there. Now let's push things too far. Let's try and open up YouTube in a Chrome web app. And you're seeing there, okay, we're stuttering. We're having a little bit of a hard time. Where's Chrome at? There it is. Looking at a white screen. Okay, we're trying. We're getting there. We're getting there. It is not handling this very well, okay? And this is a situation where we're just running out of RAM and we're running out of CPU. Let's try and open up our taskbar, which, you can see here. I've already typed that, and you can see the letters popping up when I hit enter a few seconds ago. We're still waiting for that to pop up. Let's go to our performance tab here, and let's see what's going on. So the CPU in this instance is actually kind of up and down, but it's not doing too bad. But there's our RAM pretty much spiked out 92%, 90%. Let's see here if we can keep this always on top, and let's close out of Chrome and let's go through this nasty process once again and see if we can see what our CPU is doing. So it is maxed out at 100%, which is not necessarily a horrible thing, but it does tell me that we are, at least in some way, potentially bottlenecking at that CPU. We are just maxed out at 2.15 gigahertz. It's boost clocking at times, and it's just having a hard time making it go any faster than that. And my point here showing you this is kind of twofold. One, I just want you to be aware of what the performance day-to-day is. Most people live in their web browser, and you can see that when you're in, one web browser or a handful of tabs, things are going to be okay. Once you move past that, and you're trying to multitask with, two apps as heavy as two web browsers, you are going to see things slow down. The other reason I'm showing you this is because I'm trying to illustrate that I don't think the RAM is a problem, okay? But I don't think it's the problem, because even when I'm in one web browser and I'm loading up YouTube or Twitter and it's considerably slower than it is on my PC, when you pull up that performance tab, you'll see that maybe it's 90% of your RAM used, maybe it's 92%, but it's not 100%, right? You're not into a page file yet, you've not run out of RAM, but your CPU is at 100%. It is bottlenecking at the CPU, at least to some degree. Now, at this point, we're going to do something that it absolutely is not made to do. We are going to try to run a game on it, and it's going to go quite poorly. So let's go ahead and jump over to that now, and let's open up Steam. I intended on, trying to test out a few different games, but that's just not going to happen because it's just not necessary. I'm going to load up a game that isn't particularly difficult to run. My Steam Deck can run it at 50, 60 FPS at high settings, and you're going to see here in a moment what the Surface Go 3 is capable of, and we're still waiting on Steam to open. I may actually have to... Nope, there it is. It's just taking its sweet time to get going because that's what happens on the Surface Go 3. Nothing is really in much of a hurry. So this is a game called Dinkum. It's basically like an Animal Crossing clone. It's like an indie Animal Crossing, and I do like it quite a bit. So we're going to try to launch this, and you're going to see what kind of performance that we are looking at. And I'm going to kind of talk through this so that you can see what it looks like launching this game in real time, because again, it's not particularly fast. Now, I have also lowered my settings on this game as low as I'm able to take them, and as you will see, it just isn't playable. Now, the other thing we can do to try and play games on our Surface Go 3 is we can have Xbox Game Pass or some other streaming service. And that works as well as it works on any other device. In fact, I grabbed this GameSir controller, which is USB-C. I used a C-to-C cable, and lo and behold, I was able to pull up Game Pass and play the game just fine. You can see here that my cursor is even quite laggy and difficult to get to go where I need it to be. One weird thing about Game Pass streaming was that in Edge, it didn't see my controller of any kind, this or a Bluetooth controller that I tried. In Chrome, it did. Not sure what to make of that, but Game Pass streaming did work. I played a round of Fortnite, which is not a game that I normally play, but it was the first one on there, so I played it. Managed to get a couple of kills, run around with a shotgun. So that's totally playable, but it is highly dependent upon your internet connection. If you have a slow connection, you're going to have latency, and it's not going to be a super great experience. But whether you're doing whatever NVIDIA's thing is called, or Game Pass is probably the one I would recommend, that's pretty much the only way you're going to be able to do any real gaming on this device at all. I mean, this is taking forever just to load into the game, and, you know, when we get there, it's not actually going to be playable at all. Okay, so here's my character. I'm just trying to look around, and it's quite delayed. It's quite framey. I think you can see in the corner there that we're running at 17, 12 FPS, 11 FPS. And like I said, this is not like some wildly complex, graphically intense game, okay? It just isn't. This thing really, in your mind, should be treated somewhat like a Chromebook. If you're okay with launching it up, firing up Edge, and just living in Edge and doing everything you need to do in there, Google Docs and things like that, whatever web services you want to use, you're going to be fine with this thing. Fire up the Netflix app from the store, the Hulu app, YouTube, whatever you want to do. Live in your browser, live in Microsoft Store applications, and it's going to be fine. Again, think of it more like a Chromebook than like some fully featured powerhouse of a computer. And honestly, you're going to be fine even with the Pentium Gold, even with that 4 gigs of RAM. I have actually been very surprised how much I've enjoyed using it. And yeah, some of it's because of the form factor. The size just seems to fit me better. But I'm not being restricted by the performance to the degree that I just can't use the thing. I just can't use it to game on. I can't use it to, have a ton of things going at one time. But on a screen that size, I'm not really likely to do that anyways. If all you need is a small, compact device that will allow you to be in the web, let's load up YouTube, we'll load up Feedly, we'll go to the Netflix website, and you'll see that all of these things are there and they're functioning, everything's doing okay. If you're happy with this being how you're going to use this device, like a Chromebook that runs Windows effectively, this, I think, could be a pretty decent device, in particular because, for a Surface device anyways, it's not wildly expensive. You can get the Pentium Gold model for $393, spend another $80 to $100 on the keyboard, and granted, yeah, if, maybe just buy a Chromebook would be a good way for me to tell you this. Maybe just buy a Chromebook. But if you're stuck with Windows and you want to have a Surface device, this is pretty much the closest to that you can get. I will point out as well, something I should have mentioned, it's using eMMC storage, so that's also really not helping. That is some, probably quite slow storage. That's not going to help with the speed of launching apps either. All in all, that's where I'm at. I would say for the price of the device plus the keyboard, it would be a bit of a hard sell for me. I probably would not buy this device for that price. Granted, they gave it to me for free, so I'm more than happy to use it and enjoy it. But at that price, for what I'm doing on it, there probably are a few Chromebooks in the $200 to $300 range, like a Lenovo Chromebook Duet, very similar form factor that's going to boot up faster and just generally speaking, going to perform more quickly. But again, some people don't like Chrome OS. They'd rather have Windows to have more of that Windows flexibility. That's up to you to decide. As I mentioned earlier, this was sent to me by Microsoft as a gift for being a Surface fan. So full disclosure there on that. Thanks for watching. Hit that subscribe button on your way out. I will see you on the next one. And until next time, stay nerdy, my friend.